All right, let's dive in. We're about to unlock the core secrets from one of the most influential books ever written. Seriously, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People isn't just a book. Think of it more like a user's manual for what might be the single most critical skill for success in life. But before we get to the secrets, I want you to think about something. Really think about it. When you consider all the valuable skills out there, coding, financial analysis, engineering, you name it, what do you think is the single highest priced ability on Earth? Well, according to John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest people in all of history, the most valuable skill wasn't about oil or steel. It was the ability to deal with people. He said he would pay more for that one ability than for any other under the sun. That's what we're going to break down in this explainer, exactly how to develop that skill.
So where do we even begin? Well, the first secret is a little counterintuitive. It actually suggests that to influence other people, we first have to change a really fundamental impulse inside ourselves. And to get why, we need to look at human nature at its most extreme.
Picture this. It's New York City, 1931. A desperado known as Two-Gun Crawley, a guy who would literally kill a cop for looking at him sideways, is trapped. A massive gun battle is raging for over an hour. You'd think this is a pretty clear-cut case of good versus evil, right? But here's where it gets wild. While the police are ferrying into his apartment, what does Crowley do? He writes a letter. And in that letter, this cop killer describes himself as having a weary heart, but a kind one. In his own mind, he wasn't a villain. He was a gentle soul who would do nobody any harm.
And get this, when he was sentenced to the electric chair, he didn't show any remorse. He actually said, "This is what I get for defending myself." He saw himself as the victim. So here's the crucial point. If a notorious killer like Crowley, and even Al Capone, who saw himself as a public benefactor, if these guys didn't blame themselves for anything, what does that tell you about the everyday people you and I deal with?
And look, this principle isn't just about criminals. One of history's greatest leaders, Abraham Lincoln, had to learn this same lesson through a near-fatal experience. As a young man, he loved to publicly criticize his opponents. He once wrote a letter so scathing that the guy he wrote about challenged him to a duel with broadswords. Lincoln only narrowly avoided it. You can literally see how that experience changed him. Years later, during the Civil War, after General Meade let the enemy escape at Gettysburg, Lincoln was furious, absolutely furious. He wrote this blistering letter of criticism, but he never sent it. He knew. He had learned that sharp rebukes just wound a person's pride and make them defensive. The letter would have created resentment, not results. And that brings us right to Carnegie's first core secret. 99 times out of 100, people don't criticize themselves for anything, no matter how wrong they might be. So criticism is futile. It just doesn't create lasting change. All it creates is resentment.
Okay, so if we can't criticize people into action, what can we do? This brings us to the second secret, which is all about shifting our focus from our own actions to the desires of others. How do you get anyone to do anything? The answer is actually pretty simple, but it is so powerful. You can't really make people do things through threats or demands, not for long anyway. The only sustainable way is to align what you want with something they already want. Carnegie tells this perfect little story about it. There's this father, he's worried sick because his young son is underweight and just refuses to eat. Scolding didn't work. Pleading didn't work. But the father was smart. He stopped and asked himself, okay, what does my son want more than anything? Well, he wanted to beat up the neighborhood bully who was always stealing his tricycle. So the dad connected eating healthy food to becoming strong enough to finally clobber that bully. And just like that, the boy would eat anything you put in front of him. The father had aroused an eager want. And that story just nails the point, right? The world doesn't really care about your wants. It cares about its own. So the next time you try to persuade someone, just pause and ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? You've got to see the situation from their angle.
So we've stopped criticizing and we've started thinking about what the other person wants. Now for the third secret, a simple, almost ridiculously easy tool that can create an instant connection and make people feel seen and important. So what do you think this number represents? 50,000. It's not a salary, it's not a population, but it is the key to one man's incredible political success. It was the secret weapon that helped put a president in the White House. This was Jim Farley's superpower. He could reportedly call 50,000 people by their first name. Think about that. By simply remembering and using someone's name, he paid them this subtle but incredibly effective compliment, and it made them feel recognized and valued. And here's the psychology behind why it works so well. To any person, their own name is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. It's the label of their identity. When you use it, you're acknowledging their uniqueness. When you forget it or you misspell it, you're sending a little message that they just aren't very important to you. And this isn't just a small-time trick. Here's this principle scaled up to the highest levels of business. When Andrew Carnegie wanted to sell steel rails to the Pennsylvania Railroad, did he talk about how great his steel was? Nope. He built a brand new steel mill and named it after the railroad's president, a guy named J. Edgar Thompson. So you can probably guess who they bought their steel rails from. Wow, okay, so we have covered a lot of ground, right? From killers and presidents to tricycles and steel mills. Let's bring these 3 core secrets together into a simple playbook you can start using, like, in your very next conversation. Here it is, your playbook. It's really just 3 simple shifts in perspective. First, the inward turn. Just stop criticizing. Accept that it's useless. Second, the outward shift. Focus everything on what the other person wants. And third, the simple connection. Use their name to make them feel important. They're simple principles, but I promise you, they can totally revolutionize your relationships. Ultimately, all these secrets boil down to a single challenge. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. In your very next interaction today, with a coworker, a family member, the cashier at the grocery store, anyone, what is the one thing you can do to genuinely try and see the world from their point of view? Because that, right there, is where all influence begins.